I guess we should start with your childhood, right? Let's hear, like, how did your life start? What were your earliest memories?
My earliest memories were when I was 4 years old, and I lived with my mom and my dad and my little brother, and I remember feeling like our family was like, it was like a safe place. It was perfect, and I mean, I didn't really have anything to compare it to, but I was happy, and I remember being happy, but there was also other things going on in my life that kind of, things changed. My dad, he liked to preach, like even if he didn't have church, he's still preaching. So he raised us, with the Bible and teaching us the Bible, and we went to church, and my mom sang in the choir, and so it was kind of what our life was like, when I was 4 years old. But then there was a side of my dad that was abusive. He never abused me physically or he did abuse my brother, but also it was confusing because he preaches and teaches us one thing, and then he does just
Some behaviors that contradict
yes, exactly
who he is.
Yeah, so, and one of the things that he would tell me is that, I was only 4 years old, he would say, if anybody ever touches you, let me know and I'll kill them. Nobody's going to touch my daughter. He would go off on this tangent, and at 4 years old, I didn't know what that meant. But it scared me. So
Sure.
When I was 4 years old was also the first time I was molested by a neighbor, and I didn't tell anybody because thinking that my dad's going to kill somebody is terrifying for a kid.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a safe place to go and talk it out. So I didn't tell anybody. Around the age, what was it, like 11-ish, my parents, we moved around a lot, but we were living in this house, and we moved in with another person because he was ill, so we moved in with him. And
Where did you grow up?
what?
Where did you grow up?
Oh, I grew up in Jacksonville,
Florida.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, so we moved to this new place. My dad started drinking. I mean, if he was drinking before age 11, I didn't really know. He did go out a lot. But during this time, I remember coming home, and he and his friend were like working on a car outside, and I saw a beer. And I remember it scared me. I don't know why, but I was like, oh, that's wrong. And it scared me. But then, because I started noticing my dad's behavior being different, and he's being more, fighting with my mom more, and stuff like that. And I don't know, it just kind of really scared me. But also, during that time, he had a lot of friends that he would bring, or that would come to our home, or we had neighbors that we would go over their house and they had a bonfire going. So, and all of them drink beer. So I was exposed to a lot of drunk men and my dad. And I don't know, I noticed during that time in my life that men were looking at me, these drunk men that were adults, were looking at me in a different kind of way. And I guess because I was, getting older, and a lot of times they would tell me I'm pretty, or, it was just, they were kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
And so I picked up on that. They also did that to my mom, and my mom was so beautiful and young, and my dad, his friends would hit on her, and then he would get mad and he would take it out on her. So it was a very unhealthy relationship. And also, whenever my dad we would have a bonfire. I remember one time in particular, he was drunk. He got on the fire because he did stuff like that. He's like, my daughter is a virgin. Something like, I don't know. I don't even know exactly what he said, but he was talking about me being a virgin. And he did that quite often. My mom would always make him shut up, but this particular time, I don't even think she was around. But it was so embarrassing. I didn't really understand it. And at the same time, we had there was this boy that was his my dad's friend. His son was molesting me during this time, all the time. I would have to fight him off or kick him, really hard to get away from him. My little brother, he's 2 years younger than me. He would do the same thing. He would fight him off of me. But this kid, he knew a lot about sex, and his dad was abusive, very physically abusive, because I saw it. So I didn't want to tell on him because I knew that he would get beat, so I didn't. But he was we lived there for maybe a year, and that was how long I had to deal with that. But then also, like, in school, like, I don't know why, but these kids were drawn to me, and when things like that would happen, I'd freeze. So I had, even in like first grade, I had a kid throw me on the ground and try to have, like, I don't know what, he wasn't having sex with me, but we had our clothes on, but it was just, how do kids even know that kind of stuff? I don't know. So I kind of grew up with that and the secret that I couldn't really tell anybody. And I felt like I was doing something wrong. I felt dirty. I felt embarrassed. I felt ashamed. I felt angry. And so that happened throughout my childhood. Then in my teen years, my parents had split up, and my dad took us away from my mom, and we moved to a different city. He kind of basically kidnapped us, and it took a few days, and then he let us call my mom, and then they tried to work it out, and so he would.
So your dad? What do you mean your dad kidnapped you?
Basically, yeah, my dad and my mom had a really bad fight. My dad was jealous because my mom left the Christmas party with his friend to get dropped off at our home, and he went off the deep end. And this is back when kids could stay home alone. So we were sleeping, right. And they came home fighting, and it was the scariest fight I think I've ever heard. At that point, they would fight a lot, actually. During this time, that night, my mom finally got, when they would fight, she would take me and my brother and leave the house and go to my grandma's. But this time, he threatened to kill her if she took us. So she left without us, which was the first time that ever happened. She always would protect us. And then my dad, he gave us each a trash bag and said, put whatever you want to take in the bag. And we didn't know where we were going. But we did that. We threw it in the back of the truck, and he drove us away to New City, basically kind of kidnapping us. We couldn't call our mom for a few days. But eventually we did. Biggest dream in life. I didn't have like a certain career. I just wanted to get married and have a baby. When I was 17, I really started having like a serious boyfriend. I thought this was gonna be my husband. So he got me pregnant. I didn't care if I didn't finish high school. I don't know, I just had this like, I guess kind of like a fairy tale like expectations. But he said he wasn't gonna marry me, and I ended up not being able to have the baby. I ended up going to the clinic and having an abortion. I already had so much trauma in my life that this was just like the worst thing that could ever happen. That pushed me over the edge. When I started high school, my senior year, I didn't care about anything. I was more rebellious than ever. I was severely depressed. I had zero drive, and I almost didn't graduate high school. Yeah, I just started living with a couple of roommates, and then I had a boyfriend, very unhealthy relationship. We lived together for a little while, and then we broke up. Then I had to move back home, and then I lived with somebody else, and then broke up, and then I had to move back home again. And I would go on dating websites, email people, and try to find somebody to marry me. Basically, because I wanted to get married. That was my biggest dream. My mission was to find my husband, and I would go to different states to meet people. That wasn't a good idea. I was raped, I was roofied, I was all kinds of really bad things. You know, I would tell my mom about it. She was like, I don't think that's a good idea, Christina. And I'm gonna do it anyway. But what in my heart, like what I really wanted to hear was, I love you, and I want you to be safe, and I don't think it's a good idea. You know, I wanted to hear that, but I just heard that it wasn't a good idea. So I'm just like, nobody cares. So I was very careless, and all these bad things happened, and I didn't find my husband. Well, anyway, I liked this guy, and I met him actually at a bar where he was playing pool, and we moved in together and lived together for about a year. I got engaged to him, but there was a problem in that he wasn't able to express his emotions. He wasn't able to say, I love you. There was some weird things happening with ex-girlfriends of his coming to our home and stuff. So I broke up with him, and then I moved back home again. I ended up meeting somebody else right away, but I didn't move in with him. He broke up with me. It was like a rock bottom. You know, I had a lot of rock bottoms, so this was like one of them. I was devastated. I really liked this guy, and I don't know why. I don't know why I really liked him, but I did. And so I got back on the internet, started trying to meet people again, and I had a really good job, and I made decent money, and I was only going up because I was one of the people in this office that was up for office manager, and it was a big office and a lot of people in there, and I kind of screwed it up because I kept getting online, and then people started emailing me about I found a modeling website, and the people who were posting on it weren't models. You know, they were just regular people. I'm not saying they're not attractive, but not like the typical like magazine fashion models. And so I was like, they're getting work. I wonder if I could try that and see what happens. And I didn't think I would ever have anybody want to hire me, but immediately after I put my portfolio up there, I had people sending me emails to do porn. And I don't know, it wasn't flattering to me, because when I thought of porn, that was like, to me at that time, and I did, all the guys I had lived with up to that point watched porn while we lived together, and I didn't like it. I didn't like feeling like I had to compete with anybody to get loved, to earn love from the person, and so I felt like there was a standard I could never live up to. So that was really hard for me, and so when people were emailing me asking me to do it, I was like, no, I'm not gonna. Why would I do that? I'm like, I'll model in a bathing suit, but that's it. But then, you know, when this breakup happened, it's something, I couldn't get out of bed to go to work. I almost lost my job. But I didn't really care about my life anymore. So I started, so it took a little while. I ended up meeting a photographer that shot Playboy models. And this was different than porn because the girls are really beautiful. They're airbrushed. You know, they're showing stuff, but they're not like, you know, not showing everything. And so I was thinking, I wonder. He's like, I want to submit you for Playboy. And I was like, oh, he thinks I can do that. So that was flattering to me. That made me feel like I was worth something. And, you know, all these other people don't see me as anything, but this person who shoots these kind of girls, he wants to shoot me. And so I gave in, and so that was my first shoot. I went, I met him at a hotel. I don't know, I was so brave. I guess I wasn't really brave, I just didn't care. And so I was like, well, if something happens, who cares? If something happens to me, I'll be out of this world. And I was so, like, my life was very sad. So I went there. The first night that we were there, we shot some photos. In the room, he had told me to bring lingerie, so I brought that. And so I remember the first shot, the first shoot that we did, he's like, stand on that side of the bed and I want you, he told me where to put my hands and what to do. And at first it was it was really weird. It was very awkward. But at first it was really scary. But then when he said, take your top off, that was like the scary, scary part. And I remember feeling, this isn't a good idea. But this person traveled to meet me in this hotel. I owe it to him to do the shoot. So I went through with it. I had certain boundaries, what I would do and what I wouldn't do. But then he shot me the next day and he talked me into doing more than what I wanted to do. So that happened. After that shoot, I was not right in my head. I was just kind of like, what did I just do? Like, then I saw the pictures and it was really strange because I never seen myself like that and I didn't like it. And I'm like, I'm not going to ever do that again. But I ended up doing that again. In between online dating, and I would do these shoots. I didn't do a lot, but after maybe my third shoot with like maybe 3 different photographers, I ended up meeting this one photographer I was shooting with. They were in LA and they booked me, and I was shooting in the mansion, this huge house with a spiral staircase and it's marble everywhere. And they have a makeup person, a hair person, and all these things that I had never seen before in my life. And they were going to pay me a lot of money. And it wasn't going to be showing everything. It was just going to be like Playboy style. So when I was shooting with them, I ended up not sticking to my boundaries again. Out of feeling of obligation. They're paying me. They flew me here. I owe it to them. I think that's kind of like my attitude throughout my life, was kind of like I owe them. So the shoot was kind of exciting in a way until you had to start taking off clothes, and then I learned, you know, growing up being molested, that you can mentally just check out. So I would check out, I would dissociate. It was as if I'm thinking of myself as being a piece of art, and I'm looking down on myself to see how the camera is seeing me and to make eye contact with the camera. Like, it was weird, but I wasn't me. I was somebody else, and that's the only way I could do it. But then, you know, I got paid, but most of the time the money, that was like secondary. What I really wanted was acceptance and love, and just to know that I mattered to somebody in any kind of way. And that's what being in the industry gave me. So I was shooting with these people. This man showed up that they knew, and he was a manager. He managed different girls. His girls were did the softer stuff that wasn't like hardcore porn, and they were pretty, and a lot of them only did like Playboy style things, and he wanted to represent me, and I was kind of flattered because the girls he shot were really pretty. So I ended up working with him, and I lost my job because I kept getting on the internet, and there were times where I couldn't show up to work because of I was either doing a photo shoot, or I was depressed, or I was a real mess. So I ended up losing my job, and then I started my own website. And I was dating a guy where we were living together, because every guy that I dated, we moved in together, because I don't know. I don't know why. I just wanted to get married and have a baby. So we lived together for about a year, and when so this person, he had porn magazines, and they were of women with breasts like huge, like bigger than their head each. It was well, to me it was weird. I don't know. It was a fetish, pretty much. It wasn't just normal. They were like, I won't go into it. Try not to go into it. But he had these magazines, and I didn't look like that at all. So so it was kind of weird to me. I didn't like it, even though I was doing my own website and shooting. But this was gonna be my husband. Like, he shouldn't be looking at, if he's flattered that I'm doing it, like, I didn't want him looking at other women. I just couldn't give in to that. That was hard for me. But we ended up having a really bad fight, and he started packing my stuff up in my car, and I was like, if you keep putting my stuff in my car, I'm gonna leave and I'm never gonna come back. And I was still living in Jacksonville. So he wouldn't stop packing up my car, so I had to follow through. So I got my car, and I just drove. I didn't have a map or I had a paper map, but I didn't have like a cell phone with a map on it to tell me where I'm going. So I just got on the road and started driving. And then I realized, oh, I'm in Tampa. I know somebody who lives there. I knew 2 people who lived there, and I was tired. So I called one of them. I went and stayed at his house. It was it was a guy who was like a model or whatever. So I stayed with him. I didn't really like him. He got on my nerves. So I called the photographer that lived out there that had shot me before, and told him I was there. And I don't remember how exactly it went down, but I ended up moving in with him right away. Like, I didn't have to stay by myself, and I didn't ever want to be by myself. That was too scary for me. So I moved with him, he was a webmaster. He shot his ex-wife. He shot her website. He had shot me, and then he took over my website. It took it to the next level. And I was severely depressed in that relationship. I never really left my bedroom unless I needed to eat. And he was okay just letting me not do anything. But he would shoot me, and he would push my boundaries, and he got me doing things that I going even further with things. And it was a weird relationship. He was the same age as my mom, and he was a lot older than me, and we never told each other that we loved each other, but we were a couple. It was very strange. But after about a year and a half of living with him, I ended up, he broke up with me. I wasn't shooting a lot of stuff except for my website, because that was my main income. So because my website was good and I made a lot of money, that meant that I didn't have to shoot every week or 2 weeks or whatever. I could just do what I wanted to do. But it wasn't making a lot of money, so I wasn't always able to well, I did pay my rent, but there was, sometimes where it was really hard to pay my rent. And one time I had to do a contest. I heard about it on the radio, and it was like hot legs contest. And if you knew me, this is not something I would do. It was really dumb, and I won, but it was $500. That was my rent, and it was so gross. It was so weird. I don't even know what I did, but so I got to pay my rent that time, and I got back on the dating websites. And then I ended up meeting somebody that I didn't like. Well, I met a friend, and then I met him. I was supposed to date his friend, but he took me to introduce me to his friend, and they ended up raping me. And I went back to my ex-boyfriend, told him what happened. He's like, "Do you think that he would want to shoot for my website? Like, shoot you two together?" And I was like, did he just hear me? Like, I'm crying. I've been raped, and I'm devastated. And he's asking me that, and I felt so alone and unloved, and I didn't have a relationship with my family at all, nothing. So I was like, I'm never going to hang out with those guys again. And, maybe 3 weeks went by, and I'm by myself, and I'm meeting guys. They're coming to my apartment, and I'm feeling obligated to be with them, even if I didn't like them, because they took the time. I don't know. It's just this weird thing that I had. And I guess kind of being with somebody in any kind of way was better than being by myself. Because that was the worst thing to me. I didn't have friends or anybody. So,
Well, you had a long string of boyfriends, though.
yes, I have had lots of boyfriends or hookups or whatever, all of it. I thought that in order to get a boyfriend, you have to be this certain kind of girl, and you have to definitely have sex with them, or they're not gonna move you in. Like, you have to give something. And the men, what do they like? They want, a feminine girl who's hot and sexy and like a porn girl and all these things. So I was, I never felt like I was good enough. Like, I always need to change something because this person is into this, or, sexually or looks wise, or, stuff like that. And yeah, so I didn't want to see that. I didn't want to see the guy I went on the date with. I didn't want to see the guy that he introduced me to. But there was one night in particular, I was alone, and I was sad, and I was depressed, and I was wanting to kill myself. And they contacted me, well, the one that I went on the date with contacted me to hang out at some club, and I was just like, okay, whatever, like, it's better than being by myself. And this isn't, they raped me, but I've been raped before, so who cares? So, this is so weird to even hear myself saying, because I'm so different now than I was then. It was very sad. So we hung out that night, and I ended up hanging out with the guy's friend. And, so after that, I moved in with him. And the guy who raped me, I moved in with him. He took over my porn career. He started getting me contracts with other people. He started shooting photos of me and other people together. He started taking over my whole business. And we were together for 3.5 years of the time I was in the industry. And a lot of people didn't know that he was abusive. He was physically abusive, verbally abusive. He was terrifying to me. And I was very isolated. So we ended up moving from Florida together to California. And it was a bad relationship. There was drugs. I tried almost every drug there is. Thank God I didn't get addicted. That's just like a miracle. But he was definitely addicted to everything and anything. It didn't matter if it was sex or drugs or other women. He cheated on me, but I didn't have proof. It was one of those things where they make you feel crazy, but I knew it in my heart, but I couldn't prove it. He lived a crazy lifestyle that was outside of our relationship. He had a working relationship with somebody who, I don't know if I want to go into all that, but they paid him for what he did with them. And it was with men, and paid him a lot of money. He got a new car, but he was never home. His roommate, I lived with him in our home, and he would come home sometimes, but most of the time he was out making his money. And he had a manager too, aside from this one person. He had a regular talent manager, and he had worked in the porn industry before I ever did, but he was out of it, and he was just doing his escorting stuff. So, and I was so naive to think that he wasn't actually having sex, and he's not actually going to shoot a movie. I really didn't have proof of these things until we broke up. And then I saw he was doing movies, he was doing all kinds of stuff. So 3.5 years, abuse, drugs, all the bad things, doing porn, feeling empty, feeling afraid to be by myself, that it was better to be abused than to be alone. And that at least I could just go in another room and do some drugs and tune out everything. And when he was high, he was actually kind of nice or funny. But when he wasn't, oh my gosh, he was scary. He was a huge guy with big muscles, and he could easily take me down, and he did. And he would say that he was always going to put me 6 feet under. That was like his phrase that he would use for me. And okay, so I never thought I would be in a relationship with somebody that was so much like my dad. And I said that would never happen. But I feel like my life had broke me down so much. All these things that I had zero self-worth. And there was a part of me that wanted him to kill me. And that's terrible to say, but it's true. So we broke up, and then I went back to online dating. I don't know what my problem was. I didn't learn. I never learned. And then I ended up meeting a really nice guy. So my last year of being in the porn industry, I met this guy, and he was nice. He had his son, so it was like I would be an instant mom. I didn't have to birth a child. I would be a mom and a wife. And he's not into the porn industry or anything. He was a mainstream actor. So during this time, like, we spent 24/7 together, all the time, every day, all day. We had our routine. We would go and hike, then we would eat breakfast, then we would go home, and everything was every day. We didn't really spend any time apart. And we were together for 1.5 years. So at the end of our relationship, he went on a little trip, and he was being filmed because he was an actor. He was being filmed for a mainstream show, not a porn thing. And before he left, I felt really insecure, and I said, because he wasn't taking me, and I said, please don't go to any strip clubs. And I don't know, I just felt like if he's going to get away from me, he's going to do something bad. So I said that to him. He's like, oh, I wouldn't do that. So after he got out there, he called me one night really, really, really late. And it was like after 2 a.m. And I asked him where he was. He was slurring, he was drunk. And he said, oh, I'm at P.F. Chang's. I'm like, it's too late to be at P.F. Chang's. Like, that's not where you're at. I hear music. And he was drunk, so he tried to convince me. And then he swore to me that he wasn't at a strip club. And I just knew it. That day, that night, I could barely sleep. The next day he called me and I got him to admit that that's where he went, and that's what he did. He went to a strip club, and I was devastated. I was like, I thought this guy, he's the nice guy, he wasn't abusing me, but he went to a strip club. He had time on his own, and that's what he did. And I was at the peak of my porn career, if you want to call it that. I was making a lot of money. I was just at the top, and I still wasn't enough. And that's what was really hard for me to grasp, is that at this point, everything on me was fake. I had hair extensions, which there's nothing wrong with that, but that was part of my identity. I had to have the hair, I had to have the nails, I had to have the tan, I had to have all of these things. These were who I was. That was my identity. Everything was wrapped around people wanting to pay me to do stuff, or to pay me to shoot for their magazine or this or that. And that was giving me my worth. Or that people desired me, or that I had fans that would email me and say that somehow I make their life more complete. Like, all these things were my identity. And so, and I worked so hard to be in shape, like all of these things. And then my boyfriend, who I thought I was going to marry, who was the good guy, went to a strip club. And it sounds so silly because I'm doing porn, but my expectations were different, and I felt like I knew that the man that I was going to marry was not going to do that. He's not even going to be tempted to do that. He's going to be focused on me and only me, and I'm going to be, I don't know, I'm going to be loved. So him going to the club, I knew that he didn't really love me. He admitted that he lied to me, and I was devastated. I hung up the phone and I cried. I sat on the floor in my kitchen. I'm like, God, like, if you're real, because I grew up believing in God, but where was he? If you're real, I need to know it, and I need a sign. Like, I've lost all hope. Everything I know about love is twisted and perverted, and I don't even know if I believe in it anymore, So I was like, God, just please give me a sign. And so the next day, that night, I made a list of pros and cons, because I'm like, I'm not thinking clearly. And I never really did that before. So I'm like, why should I stay and why should I leave? I made this list. The leave list was a lot longer, and that gave me some clarity. I flew out to where he was filming to be with him, and when I got there, I didn't love him anymore. It was like those feelings were gone. I didn't even like him anymore. And so anyway, I went out there, and he was introducing me to people that were working on the film or that were in the movie. And I met this guy, and he was really, everybody on set was nice. But when my boyfriend was shooting, he got me to have a conversation with him, and he asked me what I did for a living, and I said, oh, I'm a model. Like, what kind of modeling do you do? I'm like, like the car magazines, like the model, that's what I do. And he didn't believe me. He kept asking me more questions to get me to admit it. And so finally, I was just like, I do adult stuff, like porn. And he was like, yeah, I already knew that. Your boyfriend is here. He's been showing people your photos, and in our personal life, we didn't have a lot of friends, but we didn't go around introducing me or talking about me doing porn. So I felt really uncomfortable, that everybody I just talked to knew. They know what I look like that way, and I felt really exposed, like really exposed. But then he asked me, he's like, let me ask you something, Chrissy, do you believe in God? And I was like, okay, I asked God for a sign. Nobody has talked to me about God in a really, really long time. So I knew that God was sending him as a sign. And I said, yes, I do. And he said, well, you don't have to, you don't have to live this kind of lifestyle. You can be free. You can break free and have a new life. And, do you believe that? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I believe, but there was this hope because God sent me a sign. And so he was like, do you want to go outside and pray with me? And so I prayed. And at that time, I made a decision that I was never going to go back to that boyfriend, and that I was going to leave and I was going to quit the industry. It only took that one person who was brave. And I say he's brave because everybody that found out about it on the set were trying to jump him throughout the rest of the film. He was very bold and brave, and he I don't know, he reached out to me, and that's all it took. And they thought I was going to leave my boyfriend for him, but that was not what was happening. So that night, my boyfriend, he was working. He came into our hotel, and he's like, so, we're getting ready for bed. I'm like, I can't sleep with you. And he's like, why? And I'm like, because I just made a decision to change my life. I can't be in bed with you. And he laughed, and he's like, if you're leaving porn, how are you going to make a living? How are you going to pay your rent? I'm like, I don't know, but I know that God sent me a sign and he's going to take care of me. So moved back home. He was still working on the film, moved all my stuff out before he even got there. My friend Chris introduced me to people in LA that helped me move my stuff, and these guys were like total gentlemen, so nice and so kind. I moved into my own apartment. I was gone before he ever came home, and I never saw him again. And then the life changed. Now, I'm not taking any money from porn. They're still making money off me indefinitely for all the model releases that I signed. I have no control over any of it, even my website. So I told the people who were running my website, because that was my main income, that I'm leaving. Well, I told my fans first I was leaving, and then they found out from me exposing it to the fans that I was leaving, and talked to my webmaster, and he said, Chrissy, if you would have told me that you were leaving the industry to have a family, I may have let you out of your contract, but I'm not going to do that. But for a fantasy like God. And I was just like, oh my gosh, how, I don't know, I couldn't understand it. Because for me, my faith was strong, and it from my childhood to that point, it connected, and I felt like God loved me, and I couldn't understand it. So anyway, so I said, he's like, where are you missing your check? I'm like, I don't want the check. So from that point on, I never got another check from my website, which was my main income. I went from making at least $15,000 a month to making nothing. And I didn't know what was going to happen. And a lot of times people are like, well, what are you going to do? Have something in place for when you do leave. I didn't have anything, and I knew that it was okay, and I felt like God had told me that He was going to take care of me, and to give everything up. This is what He told me. It might not be the same for everybody, but He told me to give everything up and take a stand and be bold and let me show you how much I love you and how I'm going to take care of you. And so through that process of losing everything, gaining weight, like all these things, I couldn't pay for my hair or my tan or my nails. And my whole identity was stripped. And now I'm me with short hair, and I don't know, just not the fantasy anymore. And I had to figure out who I really was without all of those things. And I didn't know. It was scary. I had anxiety, I had depression, I had PTSD. I was not well, but I had hope. And like, it's crazy. All of the unknowns, God was showing me. Like, I didn't have my rent. He would put somebody in my life randomly, like, I'm going to pay your rent. I didn't have, food. People would give me food. And I wasn't profiting at all. I was barely getting by. But each little thing was like God's giving me a hug. It's like, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to take care of you. And I knew that it was all Him. I knew it because it was almost miraculous, like how things happened. And yeah, so from just that moment of that guy talking to me, everything changed. And
how many years ago was that?
Let's see, that happened in 2006.
Okay.
So it's been a long time. What, like 14 years?
13 years.
13 years.
14.
So it's been a really long time, and so much has happened from that moment into now. And now I've been married for 6 years. I found my husband who has not even looked at my porn and is not interested. He has proved to me that I could trust him because he was he had his own story. He was alone for 10 years without dating or being with a woman. And so I'm like, this is the kind of guy I can trust, and I still trust him. And we have a very good relationship, a very good marriage. My PTSD was really bad before we got married. At some point, it disappeared. I don't even know how. I don't get jealous. I'm not insecure. Just everything is different. This is different, and I just knew. I knew from the moment we started talking that he was going to be my husband, just because he treated me so different than anybody ever had, with respect. He wouldn't. When we met kind of online, not like a dating website. We have a mutual, like, real life friend. And when we met in person, he was so, what's the word? Walking the straight and narrow. Like, I would try to like link my arm through his, just like as we're walking through this little garden. He would be like, Chrissy, stop touching me. You can't do that. We're just friends. And then my feelings would get hurt. And I would be like, but that's just showing me he's going to be my husband, because God told me that the guy who's going to marry me, he's going to have a cool last name, that he's going to not be tempted. I mean, he'll be tempted. He's not going to follow through. And all these things that God told me that ended up happening. And so we were friends for a whole year. I went on a fast from men. I wasn't dating or hanging out with men for a year. But I talked to him on the phone. He was the only one.
So you were living in LA, and he was where?
He was in Houston.
In Houston.
Mm-hmm. But the whole year before we met, I was on a fast. I stopped talking. I had lots of guy friends, lots that I wasn't trying to date, because it's like Christian, the young adult Christian community, hang out in groups and stuff like that. And so I met a lot of friends. But I stopped hanging out with any of them, even if there was no romantic thing, and just started like really focusing on my relationship with God. And then that's, when I started talking to him on the phone, I decided to go on my fast. But God told me that he could stay, in my life because he's in Houston and he's doing Bible studies with me over the phone. So he's bringing me closer to God. He's not, pulling me away. So, a whole year went by. Then we met in person in December, and then he wasn't interested in dating me. He wasn't the whole time. He knew that I wasn't dateable. But so what happened, I had a speaking engagement planned in Houston on Valentine's Day. So we met in December. I didn't even know about the thing, and I got an email, and I had planned it a year ahead of time. And they were like, so, here's your information for the shoot on Valentine's Day. I'm like, okay. And then I realized it was in Houston on Valentine's Day, and it was like, this is so funny. My future husband is there. So that day, he came to my speaking engagement, and it was at a college. And I had my little sticker, like, it says something about waiting to have sex until you're married. I had it on my shirt. We went to his house, and then he asked me to be his Valentine after my speaking engagement. And yeah, that's from there. We just dated a little bit, and then we got married.
That's great.
And I moved to Houston to be with him and his family. And his family is amazing. They really are amazing.
So what do you think helped ground you? I mean, it was just the realization that
helped ground me. I think it was my faith. And I think that my relationship with my husband proved to me that I could trust men because he was so rigid.
Well, you had such a string of terrible relationships.
But he was so rigid. And if I would send him a picture of me being sexy, he would get mad at me. Like, he was so opposite of everybody else. And I kind of knew in my heart, like, that's the kind of guy I'm going to marry. And that's how it worked out. I ended up being with the guy that I could trust. Yeah. Because of his rigidness.
But I also think you were ready for something more substantial than...
Yeah. I was learning about how relationships really work, how they're supposed to work. Because everything I knew growing up...
So you met him at roughly what age?
How old was I? 35 or 36.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you were mature.
Yeah.
A little more mature than you were when you were in your 20s and desperate for some connection.
Yeah, I was a lot more mature, and I've been, taking like little classes, and I started going to church a lot and learning like the model of marriage and how it works together, and men want respect, women want love, just the model of a relationship that's healthy and all that kind of stuff. So I learned a lot, and thankfully he had been out of his own pattern of life for 10 years. He had been working on himself. So by the time I met him, he was in a place that he could kind of lead me spiritually and grow together, as Christians, believers together. And I trusted him, and I never trusted anybody in my whole life, and I trust him. And that's kind of what grounded me. Yeah. It's just finally not having to be somebody else and being seen for who I was and being accepted and loved for it. That was the healing. That healed me. The PTSD went away. So never thought that would happen. It was so bad, but yeah, I think marriage healed me. I think marriage gave me a lot of freedom too. I didn't have to, always wear a mask. I didn't have to always have my makeup on.
But marriage to the right person too.
What?
But marriage to the right person.
Yes, to the right.
Because you probably could have been married 5 times.
I could have been married
15 times. Right.
But
and they all would have ended up
in
train wrecks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really glad that I didn't get married sooner, because it would have been terrible.
Yeah.
I probably would have had so many husbands.
Or if you had kids with those husbands, it would have been
Yes.
terrible. So
Yeah, and my abusive ex-boyfriend, he got me pregnant all the time, and then he would take me to get an abortion. I could have had several kids, and that makes me really sad. I don't like to think about it.
what would you say to young women who are going through similar, not necessarily so extreme, who are not so extremely off course, but just who are struggling with relationships, struggling with the similar things?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to them?
I would say, I would just want to tell them that they are worthy of love, that they matter, that just to hold on, wait, work on yourself, don't lose hope, and that, one day the right person's going to come along. But you have to be the person, so you have to work on yourself, so you have to be the person that would attract the kind of man that you want. Like, what is this, what you want? What kind of woman is he going to be attracted to? And that's what I had to do. That's why I had to really focus on growing and being, a good, not a good person, but just work on myself.
Well, I think you were, before that point, you were attracting guys left and right, but they were the wrong kind of guys.
And I knew that, I wanted to be with a guy who is a leader, that can lead our relationship. Not that he's over me. It's more like we work together, but he's stable.
Yeah, but I think a lot of women can attract a lot of guys if they look a certain way, if they act a certain way, if they behave a certain way. But you're attracting the wrong kind of guy.
Yeah, and my standards for men were very low.
Yeah, right. So I think part of it is having high standards, knowing the difference between guys that are worthless and guys that are worthwhile, and being patient and working on yourself.
Yeah.
To get there.
Work on yourself. Be the woman that's going to attract the kind of guy that you want. And it's not easy.
No, having high standards is a tall order sometimes.
Yeah. So.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
I'm glad it worked out so beautifully.
Thanks.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chrissy.